Hi everyone, welcome to this wonderful workshop session at the horror programme at the University of the Underground. I'm Aggie Haynes, I'm head of the horror programme, which is a critical exploration into illicit societal fears and human passion for horror. So we're going to be investigating institutions and popular culture through the lens of the horror genre in dramaturgy, film, costume making and more. So University of the Underground is a free, pluralistic and transnational university that was founded in 2017, and it started in the basements of nightlife venues. So we're a non-profit, we're a registered charity. If you'd like to donate, please visit universityoftheunderground.org. On this website, you can find loads of exciting programming, times and events, and you can also find all that stuff on Instagram and other recordings, awesome talks and workshops just like this one. So I'm really excited because today we have Gill Wildman in, who's started lots of interesting companies, particularly director Upstarter and Plot Studio. So Gill's a creative and social business mentor, strategic designer and facilitator. She designs and delivers Upstarter programs, having prototyped Upstarter into being, formalizing it as a CIC back in 2016 after developing a national design-led program for early stage technology startups at the Design Council, which is really awesome. So prior to this, Gill's had 20 years at Plot, which is her strategic design innovation consultancy with clients including people like the BBC, Microsoft, Facebook and Nokia. Her expertise lies in designing and delivering powerful programs, particularly sort of BBC Innovation Labs, framing the Creative Studio for Festival 2022, prototyping the experience for Nokia, and many bespoke standalone workshops. So she's a proud board member of Rising Arts Agency Belt Leadership Programme, board member for Studio Meineck, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Gill, and was innovation industry leader at Hyper Island UK, steering board member of WECA Creative Scale Up, which is like a really amazing list of previous jobs that you've done, Gill. So we're really excited to have you. Yeah, feel free to take it away. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Aggie. To be honest, when this theme came up for University of the Underground, and I've been following it for a few years, I wrote a rather embarrassing begging letter to Aggie saying, please will you give me a spot, because horror is like one of my heartfelt favorite places to go to, and I totally love it when we get to Christmas and there's the ghost story, or at Halloween when all kinds of stuff is officially sanctioned by anybody. So I come to this as a total passion project, and I wanted to just make a little space today for us to really play around with the idea of monsters and monstering, and to just really have a couple of hours of playfulness around it. So I know some people, when they say a workshop, it often means a talk, but in this session, I definitely mean it's a workshop. So we're going to do some work together. We're going to put some things together that I either will work with the project you're already doing, or be complementary, or be something else that's a starting point for something new. So that's what we're going to do for the next couple of hours. I wonder if I could have, I've got sharing powers. Brilliant. That's great.
You've got the power.
Thank you. I tried to rehearse this with a much fancier camera thing called I don't know if anyone's ever used that, but I wanted to use something that put me a little bit more in the picture, but it wasn't quite working. So I'm going to stick to straight up old Zoom and see how that works. So this is what I'm going to try and get us to do this afternoon. So we're going to dig into what makes a monster, and I'm talking hugely broad here about the kind of the monstrous, the scary, the character-driven creature, whatever it is for you, but explore what makes monsters work for us and what kind of roles they play. And then we're going to create some new complex monsters, almost much more contemporary, the kinds of monsters that would scare us right now. And we're going to explore a little bit about their characteristics, about how we make them vivid. And if we get the time, I'd like us to consider where we might leave them around the internet for other people to discover. It felt like it would be nice to do. If we can do all that in the time, that will be amazing. I do feel often when I run a workshop that it's important to set some rules about how to work. Now, I don't know how you've been working so far, but here's a couple of suggestions for me. That we speak one at a time, because Zoom is absolutely rubbish if more than one person tries to speak. But equally, we've got patience to wait for everybody to share what you're thinking and talking about. And so we're going to use the chat a lot for, you know, anything you want to talk to me about it as a back channel, or whether you want to put something out to the group. Because we're designers, well, as far as I know, and that's what we're going to find out, it's really, really important for us to build on each other's ideas and credit them where they come from. And as I was thinking about this session, I suddenly realised that because we might be looking at contemporary themes, there might be particular issues that are actually a bit heavier for someone. And so what I'm saying here is, if you need us to avoid a subject, or if you need me to not continue down a particular thread, just let me know. So basically, if there's something that you feel is you'd rather us not touch on, I'm really, really open to that as well. So if it's too close to something that really matters to you, or something that makes you feel uncomfortable, just let me know. Before we start, is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything that's sort of normal University of the Underground that should be here? And please just unmute.
If anyone else wants to suggest anything, go ahead.
Okay, all right, I'm going to put you on a different view because I can only see some of you there. Bro. Great. So just before we get going, what would be really helpful for me to tune into would be just something quite simple about, why are we interested in horror? What have you been finding out through your investigations? Is there anything that's been coming up that is like a pattern for you? Are you putting it in the chat? No.
So it'd be really great if all the researchers have their own project areas. What might be amazing is if all of you really quickly, if you could write really shortly, like maybe what in a couple of words your main area of interest is, and then Gill could see them in the chat. I think that would be really helpful.
That'll be fantastic, because it's all of this topic is so subjective, so context driven. And one thing that works in one context just doesn't work in another. And so I'm a product of the horror journey I've been on. And I think, and you will be as well. So it really helps me if you could just put in a little something that tells me what you're fascinated by, what you're looking at. Even if it's a partial thought because you haven't really resolved it yet.
And also, what a great challenge to try and write your massive research topics in such a short.
Okay.
We had a talk with Nellie the other day, Jill, about how it's sometimes the hardest thing to do is condense you know, say something very complex in a really simple way. So I
Absolutely.
imagine that's what everyone's doing.
Okay, let's oh great, fantastic. Brilliant. Oh, that's interesting, Lindsay. Ugh. And also, yeah. Wow. Oh, fantastic, Catherine. Right up my street. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic. Human space and vegetable relationships. Oh my goodness, this is great. I feel like I can't wait to see what you actually do with this. Brilliant. So I'm just going to give you a little backgrounds about me and my relationship to horror, because that will explain why I come at it the way I do. And you're going to have your own journey, of course, which is why you're looking at these things. But since the age of about 13, when I finished reading Dracula, I've consumed horror in every form that I can get my hands on, from books to films to plays to immersive experiences. And it's the sort of thing that I often do on my own, because partners, friends, work colleagues, no one else seems to really want to do that. So for me, horror is not really a group activity, which is why this is really so fantastic. But I often find I'm the person on my own that goes and does this stuff, because I'm the anomaly, the person that likes it. So whether it was going to see, you know, 70s horror classics like Rabid and Squirm and Piranha, sort of through to how I grew a massive fan of the Aliens sort of franchise as that evolved, and in fact it's mine and my kids' favorite films, which also sounds very odd if you speak to anybody else, because no one has that kind, you know, they're usually talking about The Princess Bride or Stand By Me or lovely sort of, you know, soft gentle films. But for us, you know, Alien and Aliens in particular is our sort of family film that we refer to, we pull phrases from and everything. So, but I've also been really a massive fan of other forms of horror making. So, for example, Slung Low did a thing at the Barbican a few years ago called They Come Out at Night, you know, an amazing little trip down into the Barbican car park with very strange vampiric-like things and some very, very disturbing things in your headphones. But also looking at things like M.R. James and the sort of ghost stories. I mean, they call them ghost stories, but they're as horrific as it gets when it comes to inventing the kinds of vengeful, sort of almost undescribable hair and teeth-led creatures that follow these really naive Victorian sort of antiquaries that go and trip over them in books or in catalogues. And then we've got things like Lovecraft and Arthur Machen, so that create these kinds of worlds that are so disturbing that we are, you know, we're disrupted right from our very core. I had the chance to go and live in Pittsburgh for a few years, and one of the features of that city is a thing called scare houses, which is where they take a whole floor of a warehouse and turn it into little vignettes from familiar horror films or horror places, and literally you walk through these things being jump scared backwards and forwards until you can barely get out of the building. But they scoop up all of the acting talent for the whole of Halloween whilst they put these things on. And again, in the States, this is quite a tradition of like putting on scary events. And so there was one at West Pennsylvania State Penitentiary, which was like a ghost tour in the dark. And then another one, which is like a more performative one where you go into it. Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm going to move on. I'm just sort of giving you some context. But you know, in the state penitentiary, the way into it was through a coffin that you got pushed through, and then they open it up and they shout at you as soon as you come out of it. So there's these kinds of spaces that people make that I end up also making for friends. And so there's one that we produced, which was Hackney WECA Man, which was a birthday event. Which I'm really sorry I've got no photos of because something happened to my laptop just before Christmas. But imagine, if you will, all of the kind of creepiness of the WECA Man, but played out live in a location where lots of friends would be grouped around a trail for someone whose birthday it was to get increasingly spooked out. So for me, my love of horror started with a really, really exciting series called Hammer House of Horror that used to be shown on Friday nights when I was a kid, and would be left on my own by parents that would go down the pub and leave me to get absolutely scared stupid. And that really sort of shaped my sort of understanding and love for it, because of the kinds of characters they'd have, you know, people that got lost in the woods, or people that got put in an institution out of their control, all the kind of really classic tropes of horror. And so this amazing guy, Peter Cushing, who was actually quite a mild-mannered guy who came from, lived in Whitstable, and was actually really, really adored, but seemed to like underpin many, many characters. Here's a little view on the scare house and the kinds of things that they would be doing. But that's me. That's what I bring. And thank you for giving me a little glimpse into what you're doing. What I'd love to do now is one of the things I asked you to do was to have a little think for me about what it is for you. So I'd asked you to bring some materials for us to use. I wanted you to bring, you know, what you considered monsters and how they made you feel. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to come to a mural, and I'm just going to put it in the chat. Da, da, da. If I can find it. Oops, there we go. Because what I'd like us to do is I'd like us to collect some of these thoughts, and then I'll give them back to you. Right, okay, that's going to go in the chat. And if you'd like to meet me here, on the left-hand side is literally a list of what have you brought and what are the qualities. So what would be really great is if you can either describe it in language or upload an image of what you're thinking about. With each of these, it would be great if you put your name with it so we know it's yours. And so we're going to do three things. We're going to put your name in, upload what it is you're thinking about. Has everyone used Mural before or similar things? Have you used different things? Okay, on the left-hand side is a palette of stuff. And literally all you really want is the tab that's got, let me just move from there to there. 1 second. I'm going to share again. So here we've got a tab of post-it note lookalikes and just a text block. And literally you can grab hold of one and just copy it and add yours. So I don't want it to be too onerous for you. If you're having problems putting stuff up, you can literally drag and copy and paste something from your machine onto this. And then we can change the view on it. But literally it's the text blocks, just grab one. This is for later. But this is what we're looking at right now. And you can undo things, so don't worry, you're not gonna damage anything. Great. Great. Natalie, what did you bring? Natalia, sorry.
Sorry. We're meant to, I'm a bit confused. Are we meant to talk about the monsters that we, representations of monsters in our lives?
Yes, so that's what I asked you to bring, was a representation of one of the monsters for you.
Yeah. Okay. So the one that I have, it's a Brazilian. When I think about monsters, I often think about like my childhood and things that scared me back then.
Great.
And I think about like stories that my parents used to tell me, specifically like Brazilian folklore. And the monster that I brought, it's a folkloric tale called like Caboclo d'Água. And I'm like,
Okay.
I'm really scared of lakes. So this is a folklore where it's basically this man that is in a lake and he'll like drown people and stuff.
Right.
And I but I don't know how to, am I meant to put like an image there?
Yes, please. Or just to describe it, or a link, whatever works for you.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, I'll do that. But yeah, it's he used to like sink ship. Oh, he used to. It's like a folklore tale where he'll like drown people and sink people. And here in Brazil, there's loads of like really scary animals in lakes and rivers, and you often see like news stories of like people getting dragged into the water and like never coming back just because there's like, it's like a land with like loads of like animals. But yeah, people will often blame it on these like folkloric tales of like creatures that exist underwater. But I'll put it in.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, if you could just write the name, then we can look it up and add links and an image and stuff. That's fantastic. Brilliant. Pauline, what did you bring?
Hi.
Hi.
Maybe I missed the memo that we had to bring things. I see that some others also didn't know, but
I'm sorry, Pauline. It should say on the website, but I'm sorry if I haven't messaged anyone to mention it.
okay. Yeah, so sorry.
If you haven't thought of something, maybe it might be worth thinking of something that's come up in your research. So if there's if there's anything that's appeared in your research where you thought about, I mean, particularly for you, Pauline, there's these interesting characters that you're looking at. So Pauline's researcher, she's been looking at live action role playing, but particularly of sort of like strange scenarios and people who particularly like to reenact things like battles. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there could also be a monstrous real life character that you've come across.
Or what made you interested in horror in the first place, Pauline? What was the thing that you know, if you look back, what's the thing that actually got you?
What I thought what was interesting about this program is that horror can become a tool. And like for me, it was more, before it was more a feeling that you cannot control. So like using horror as a kind of tool to work with, I was really interested by that, to turn it into something that you actually can control, and and not being just a spectator, but more an actor in this.
And if we take it less sort of broad, but bring it into more of the kinds of characters and sort of things that embody horror, is there any sort of type of?
Yeah, I'm a researcher of like irrational knowledges. So I worked a lot about these people searching for a Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, and I'm looking a lot at like conspiracy theories, like all this way of seeing the world through a different lens. So yeah, but I don't want to say again Bigfoot because I worked already so much about Bigfoot. So I have to think about a monster that could come in my new work.
We're not looking about, this is not to work on them. This is just to use them as examples to think with. Yeah.
Then I will say Bigfoot.
Would you like to put it down next to your name then? That would be great.
I will.
If you've got an image that you want to drag in, that would be great as well. That will give us something to look at.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the misunderstanding.
No problem. No problem at all. Is it Lila? Yeah, Lila, tell us about this one.
So, hello. Yeah, it's from, I'm researching these caves in Maastricht. It's the most southern city in the Netherlands. And yeah, it's this ancient sea creature that was found there, fossilized. It's not a monster per se, but it is a huge dinosaur in the sea that really scary. It has a very big jaw, and it's also hypothesized that it's also a mammal on land, so it moved also on land. It's what I could immediately think of right now, but if that doesn't work, there's when I was a kid, I had this garden, like a gardener who would come and repair the garden at home, would sit me down and tell me the story of a black cat. And in Egypt, where I'm from, black cats are like a representative of the devil. So he really told me that black cats are the devil, and would come up with these wild stories. And as a kid, I really began to be scared of black cats. But now I own one, so I don't know if that's something, but
it's perfect. So this is really about trying to understand what was a monster, and what were the kind of qualities they had when you were small, and where that connects to, because I think that early experience that we have becomes quite particular in how it influences us in the future. Great. Lindsay, can you tell us about this monster tumor?
Yeah, so this is actually my entire master's thesis was centered on this, but which just started my fascination with cancer. But a teratoma literally translates to monster tumor. And it's basically a kind of tumor that grows like several different germ layers because it comes from like germline cells or like a stem cell like cell type. And they are heavily, historically have been associated with like the satanic conceptions of virgins who masturbated, also like feminine hysteria and like women's imaginations to make their bodies into like monstrous potential, and witches and things like that were known to have them. But they also have historically, the fascination with them has led to the discovery of stem cells and modern day medicine, which is quite interesting. So they're like a monster that's really created a lot of what we consider to be all of modern day medicine. But yeah, I'm really fascinated with them because they're so, they're very strange, and they have this very powerful potential as a very specific kind of tumor, where people like go out looking for them and collecting them. Like there's just a bunch of papers where people have recorded like they found 300 teeth in one of them, or like the lower half of a human body.
Wow, wow, brilliant. Fantastic, thank you. James, fantastic. That's a classic. Pennywise.
Yeah, I love the idea of something having a different type of facade, like presenting itself as something else, maybe something angelic or sweet, but actually underneath it's like a hideous monster.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Kat, tell us about the ghosts.
So yeah, I think for me, especially when I was younger, like ghostly apparitions and kind of like demonic looking things, especially things associated with water and drowning, have a particular visual presence for me, particularly like effeminate kind of forms. I was also thinking of like, there are some interesting Celtic monsters like kelpies that are like, kind of like skeletal, like rotting creatures that are like horses. And yeah, I think it's like partly that kind of like rotting away, like being like non-human, but being animated and yeah, sinister.
Fantastic. Bianca, I love this. Do you want to tell us a bit about what or do you want to finish typing first? Sorry.
No, it's fine. I can talk. So yeah, the research, so I'm researching into this, into the apple monoculture in my region, which is South Tyrol, which from the outside looks also quite it's touristically sort of paradise. Everyone thinks that nature, it's untouched by humans. And yeah, there are a lot of like ideas that are quite wrong about the whole region. So it's one of the biggest producers of apples and also patented apples. So corporations that create seeds so that the farmers cannot use their own seeds. So I'm looking really into the whole dynamic of this industry. And yeah.
Fantastic. So this is brilliant. We've got, who hasn't said, there was another one. Has anyone
Me,
not? Please.
Me, I haven't.
Yours, please, Ludovic.
Yeah, this is a totally childhood thing. I was not that scared of like fantasy creatures, but then like my cousin at some point they gifted him. He was passionate about insects, and someone gifted him with a embalmed black tarantula that was quite big, and he had it like behind the glass. And he would like say that it would come for me and devour me and kill me and everyone, like my parents and stuff, because he wanted to scare me. And he succeeded because I felt like that was an actual thing, like a real animal. I was like, it's just gonna resuscitate and come for me. And I just saw it once, and then I only knew it was hidden somewhere in the house and I didn't know where, and I would just be on alert all the time. And I was spending there a lot of time, but I would be like on alert, being like, where is the tarantula and when it's gonna rise and come for me, because that was like real, you know, the thing that thing was alive at some point would absolutely kill me.
Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And I don't know if you noticed, but as soon as we start populating this with examples, we start to open up a space, which is, you know, the kinds of things that we know have triggered us in the past and scared us, but equally things that we haven't known about, you know, particular country, particular cultures, and there's so much to explore here. This is really brilliant. So mine's Dracula, and it's really banal because compared to yours, because it's a classic monster. But I guess when I was 13 and reading about the whole aspect of vampires and sexuality and all of those things that kind of happen all at once in that package of that novel, how it becomes such a certainly for me is like a real touchstone around horror and about things that are monstrous. The things that, for example, have a huge, a massive appetite, an unquenchable appetite, or amazing strength. You know, I mean, sometimes you see them in the films where a vampire will throw something that's much heavier than it across the space. So the kinds of qualities of these things is also what intrigues me. So what I'd like you to do is go back to the example you've used, and next to it, I'd like you to just pull out, what are the qualities of this thing you're looking at? And by qualities, I mean, why does it get you? So for example, James, you were talking about something being disguised as cute, but actually is, you know, is really violent and evil. So if you could do that for this next part, just take what you've looked at and then pull out what the qualities are next to it. And here there's no right or wrong, it's what matters to you. Why does it work for you? I'm going to do a second list here. Does that make sense? Why does this thing spook you? Aggie, you're welcome to join in if you want.
Yeah, I'd love to, if that's okay.
Please do, please do. Humans dressed as big animals, that's a really interesting one. There's a conference that takes place around the US called the Furries. And it's basically a conference for people who like to dress up as animals, sometimes with animatronics to make them look more convincing. So I was once passed by a car with 2 squirrels in it. One with an animatronic tail that went really brilliantly. But yeah, and for some of us that is terrifying. the unpredictability of bodies. Oh, I mean, that's a massive thing with cancer, isn't it? The body sort of doing what it does without any control. Yeah, absolutely, Natalia. That's the fear of the unknown. I mean, and underwater, you can't see what's there. It's that hiddenness about it, isn't there? I once, have you ever done that when you've got a diving mask and you look out, you're in the sea and you look out into the ocean? And that can be a really, really scary experience just in itself because of what might come, not of what does. Fantastic. This is interesting, Veronica. Could you tell us a bit about this? Why the entity that can use images and mirrors in another realm? That's great.
Yeah, because I don't know, when I was a child, I always associated ghosts with like mirrors, that they can like come from the mirror to me in my bed. So I'm still a little bit afraid of the mirror because of this. But because I study film studies, like film is full of ghosts, so this I always like studying ghosts in some sense, so that's also why, yeah, I'm just like fascinated by it, because it's something that is connected to past, but you cannot fully grasp it. It's always like in the present, but only as something, not as an imprint of the past, so you cannot fully like make it yours or just like have it as a possession or as an artifact.
Right. Fantastic. And just checking in with the ones at the bottom. Aggie, tell us about this. Oh, poltergeist, yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd just add poltergeist because I think for me, the thing that really bothers me is like the relentlessness of it. So people, particularly people who tell stories about being haunted by poltergeists, it seems to be like an ongoing problem that goes on for years, and people move house and then they still have problems, and there's like a tenacity to that type of ghost that I think is like, it could haunt you forever, and it's not just like a one-time.
Right, it seems to travel with people, doesn't it?
Yeah, like yeah, they stick to you almost. That's the thing that really bothers me.
Brilliant. There's a great series on BBC iPlayer, which I think you can get in different countries as well, called the Battersea Poltergeist, which is a great little series.
Right.
To an audio one. Great. Scary because dark, silent, unpredictable movements. Yes. Coming from far unknown places, actually living in an uncanny and completely other than human way. Yes, it's funny how movement can just completely disturb us when it's done in a way that doesn't feel right. Brilliant. Would anyone like to mention anything before we move on? It's been great to see these. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was going to share one. Oh, sorry, James, I didn't realise. Is it not working on your machine? No. Okay. Well, we can post stuff for you. Just let us know. Great. So is there anything that you can see in that list on the right-hand side that is a pattern, things that seem to be common to what we're talking about? Can you see words and phrases that are repeated?
There's a lot of words that have "un" in front of them. Unknown, unsure.
There's lots of that, definitely.
Things being kind of close to being humans, but not quite, like that uncanniness.
Right. Absolutely. Maybe. Or posing as human, but not being. Like a vampire, like a clown demon.
Also things that you can't fully see or understand, like loads of people spoke about like unpredictability or like hidden or unknown.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. That's really our warm-up to get us really thinking about what the qualities are of things that work or have worked for us in the past. I mean, one of the things about horror too is that it changes what we think it is really horrific. And if you give me 1 second, I'm just gonna double check. So yeah, one of the things that occurred to me was in some, it's like uncontrollable anger and violence, you know, so things like Candyman, when you summon up something like a demon or a spirit and you can't put it back, or when it's got raven and it's got hunger, so like, you know, werewolves and vampires, you know, there's just no stopping them, or when they're temporary, they're not always like that, so they change. So it's like they're not quite all, you know, they might be a person most of the day, but then something happens, some kind of transformation that again might be triggered by something or might be uncontrollable. You think about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or places where we've got no escape, where we can't get out. You know, films like Get Out, for example, where we can't sort of remove ourselves from that danger. Or things that penetrate into our world. I mean, as someone was saying earlier about mirrors and things coming from one plane into another. If you think about films like Ring, when you think, without wanting to spoil that very, very particular scene, which is absolutely terrifying. I'm not going to mention it, but there is that point where something from one world comes into our world. And also, you know, the M.R. James film story about the metatin, which is an image, a print that changes over time, showing a really, really terrifying story of something that's actually happening. And then we've got things that are like ingrained into our culture and like religious belief systems. So things like The Exorcist or The Omen, you know, where we've actually got characters, or the golem. There's all of these kinds of hard written stories. And like the one you were talking about, Natalia, about the one that you were told as a child, some of those stories become so much part of us as we grow. And then there's things that should be dead but aren't and won't stay dead. And so those things that come back to life, and the things that may even come and chase us. Or other kinds of monsters where it's everybody else and they're all in on it, and we're not in on it until we find that out. So things like Rosemary's Baby or Hot Fuzz or Cabin in the Woods or The Wicker Man, you know, these films where everybody else knows but you don't. I find this really, really thrilling to sort of pull apart a little bit.